Hello everybody. Now we are going to talk about Section 5. And Section 5 comprises of Chinese participation in regional and multilateral aid programs actively. China's foreign aid starts from helping friendly neighboring countries. In 1950, China began to provide material aid to North Korea and Vietnam, which was a prelude to China's foreign aid. In September 2019, the Chinese government issued a white paper titled China and the World in a New Era, which systematically reviewed China's major achievements in foreign aid over the past 70 years. According to the white paper pointed, as of 2015, China has provided nearly 360 billion US dollars of aid to 166 countries and international organizations, dispatched over 600,000 aid workers, provided medical assistance to 69 countries, and assistance has been provided to more than 120 developing countries in implementing the United Nations Millennium Development Goals. Besides, China has announced 7 times that it would unconditionally cancel the debts of heavily indebted poor countries and least developed countries due to interest-free government loans to China. Now, China's foreign aid is mainly provided by regional aid. At the same time, China supports and participates in the development aid work of the United Nations and other multilateral institutions within its capacity, and actively conducts exchanges and discusses practical cooperation with multilateral organizations and other countries in the field of development aid with an open attitude. Regional aid refers to the aid from a single donor country to the recipient country through regional cooperation and mechanisms and platforms. Multilateral aid refers to the aid provided by a group of countries or an institution representing a group of countries such as the World Bank to one or more recipient countries. On the one hand, China lays great emphasis on strengthening group consultation with recipient countries through regional cooperation mechanisms and platforms, such as Forum on China-Africa Cooperation and China-ASEAN Summit, and has announced assistance packages in response to the development needs of various regions on more than one occasion. Foreign aid under China's regional cooperation mechanism will be introduced in the following 3 parts: promoting a new China-Africa strategic partnership, promoting practical cooperation with ASEAN, and supporting the economic and social development of other regions. In promoting the new China-Africa strategic partnership, China has provided different assistance and support to Africa's culture, infrastructure, healthcare, education, environment, and loans. China has all along paid great attention to its agriculture cooperation with Africa. According to statistics, by the end of 2017, China had constructed 25 agricultural technology demonstration centers in Africa, and Chinese experts and technicians had carried out over 300 small-scale demonstration projects in Africa, popularized 450 practical agricultural technologies, and trained nearly 30,000 local farmers and technicians, which drives the project area crops such as rice, corn, fruits, vegetables, increasing by an average of 30% to 60% for the improvement of local agricultural technology, and the increasing ability of the agricultural production made a positive contribution. Infrastructure. Infrastructure has always been the focus of China's assistance to Africa. According to a study by consulting firm Deloitte, 1/5 of Africa's infrastructure projects are financed by China, and a third are built by Chinese companies. Between 2012 and 2016, China provided an average of $11.5 billion a year in infrastructure financing to Africa. So far, China has assisted more than 200 infrastructure projects in Africa. The Tanzania-Zambia Railway, the Addis Ababa Expressway, the Grand National Theatre of Dakar, the Yaoundé Multipurpose Stadium, and the Africa Union Conference Center, all of which are supported by China. In addition, in 2015, the FOCAC Johannesburg Summit proposed to help 10,000 villages in African countries access satellite TV. In January 2018, the first Universal Village Access project was officially launched in the Democratic Republic of Congo. In January 2019, the first Universal Village Access project was completed in Uganda. In October 2019, the largest 10,000 Villages Connect project was completed in Nigeria. covering all 36 Nigerian states and one capital district. 772 out of 774 local governments have received assistance, benefiting 1,000 villages and 23,000 families. Up to December 2019, 7,956 villages in 20 African countries had completed satellite TV installation. China assisted the construction of 30 hospitals and 30 malaria prevention and control centers, provided $100 million worth of medical equipment and supplies and anti-malaria drugs, and trained over 3,000 medical staff for African countries. In early 2014, several African countries were hit by a severe outbreak of Ebola hemorrhagic fever. China provided about $400 million, built the first biosafety level laboratory in Africa, and sent 16 teams of clinical and public health experts to assist the affected countries. In the face of COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, the Chinese government has repeatedly provided relevant anti-epidemic materials to Africa and sent 7 medical teams to 15 African countries. In 2012, China announced its African Talent Program, training 30,000 personnel in various sectors for Africa in 3 years and offered 18,000 government scholarships. In that year alone, China offered 6,717 government scholarships to African countries. In 2015, at the Johannesburg Summit of the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation in 2015, China proposed a China-Africa Cultural Cooperation Plan. China will build 5 cultural centers for Africa, provide 2,000 educational opportunities for Africans with academic degrees, and 30,000 government scholarships. Every year, China will organize 200 African scholars to visit China and 500 young Africans to study in China, training 1,000 African media practitioners each year. In order to promote capacity building in Africa, at the 2018 Beijing Summit of the FOCAC, President Xi Jinping proposed 10 Luban workers. 10 Luban workshops will be set up in Africa to provide vocational training for young Africans. China will support opening of a China-Africa Innovation Cooperation Center to promote youth innovation and entrepreneurship. A tailor-made program will be carried out to train 1,000 high-caliber Africans. China will provide Africa with 50,000 government scholarships and 50,000 training opportunities for seminars and workshops, and will invite 2,000 young Africans to visit China for exchanges. Now, from 2013 to 2018, China provided meteorological assistance to the Comoros, Zimbabwe, Kenya, Namibia, Cameroon, Sudan, Democratic Republic of Congo, and Guinea within the framework of the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, helping African countries improve their meteorological services. In the 2018 Beijing Summit of the Forum on China and Africa, the Chinese is willing to continue to provide African countries of the meteorological satellite data and products as well as the necessary technical support. To continue to African countries provide meteorological and remote sensing application facilities and education training aid. To support African meteorology, weather and climate services, the implementation of the strategy improve African national disaster prevention and mitigation and ability to cope with climate change. At the 2018 Beijing Summit of the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, China announced China will extend $60 billion of financing to Africa in the form of government assistance as well as investment and financing by financial institutions and companies. This will include $15 billion of grants, interest-free loans, and concessional loans, $20 billion of credit lines, the setting up of $10 billion special fund for development financing, and $5 billion special fund for financing imports from Africa. We encourage Chinese companies to make at least $10 billion of investment in Africa in the next 3 years, they said. In addition, for those of Africa's least developed countries, heavily indebted and poor countries, landlocked developing countries, and small island developing countries that have diplomatic relations with China, the debt they have incurred in the form of interest-free Chinese government loans due to mature by the end of 2018 will be exempted wholly. Since China and ASEAN announced the establishment of strategic partnership in 2003, China has conducted active cooperation with ASEAN countries in all fields, focusing on providing economic and technical assistance to low-income ASEAN countries to help the ASEAN narrow internal development gaps. China has provided funding through multiple channels to support ASEAN in playing its leading role in the regional cooperation. China has assisted the construction of a large number of industrial and agricultural production and infrastructure projects which have played a boosting role in the economic development of ASEAN countries. In agricultural field, Guangxi province has actively carried out exchanges and cooperation with ASEAN countries in agriculture experiments and demonstrations, personal training, development of agricultural resources, trade of agricultural products, and established overseas agriculture cooperation demonstration zones in Vietnam and Cambodia. Organized and implemented trials of superior crop varieties in Indonesia and Myanmar, and Lankaj Mekong agriculture cooperation projects and established production and processing bases for sugar, cassava, silkworm, sisal, and experimental stations for agriculture technologies. At present, the station has introduced more than 750 new varieties of crops for trial cultivation to ASEAN countries and selected 150 varieties suitable for local planting, covering an area of more than 5 million mu, generally increasing the yield of local varieties by 20 to 50% and increasing the yield per MU by more than 20%. Through the platform of experimental station, nearly 10,000 people were trained in local agricultural management, technical personnel, farmers, and agricultural college students. In addition, China has organized more than 260 training sessions on agricultural technology and management for ASEAN countries, attracting more than 4,000 agricultural management and technical personnel from ASEAN countries and providing human resources support for regional agricultural development. To support ASEAN's development and promote cultural exchanges with ASEAN, at the 21st China ASEAN Leaders Meeting in 2018, Premier Li Keqiang proposed to set up China ASEAN Elite Scholarship, launched the Bridge of the Future China ASEAN Young Leaders Training Program, and invite 1,000 outstanding ASEAN young people to China for training in the next 5 years. For the countries on Indochina Peninsula, there are still under development, and that is Thailand, Myanmar, Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam. China has proposed corresponding assistance measures. During the 6th GMS Economic Cooperation Leaders Meeting in 2018, China and the countries on Indochina Peninsula signed the Regional Investment Framework 2022 and other documents, and will carry out 227 investment and technical assistance projects with a total amount of $66 billion in the next 5 years to promote poverty reduction and sustainable development on this peninsula. Targeting to common development, China made use of such platforms as China Select Forum, CCF, China Caribbean Economic and Trade Cooperation Forum, the Belt and Road Forum for International Cooperation and Trade Cooperation Forum, China Pacific Island Countries Economic Development, and Cooperation Forum to carry out cooperation with developing countries in regions concerned. Next, in recent years, China has stepped up its assistance to Latin America and the Caribbean. In 2013, China pledged to build 1 or 2 agriculture technology demonstration centers in the next 3 years, send 100 medical teams to the Caribbean region, train 100 on-the-job graduate students, and provide 1,000 government scholarships in 2014. China announced to provide US $10 billion of preferential loans to Latin America, 6,000 government scholarships, 6,000 training opportunities in China, and 400 on-the-job master's degrees opportunities. In 2015, China has provided Latin America with US $30 billion special fund for production capacity operation and $20 billion US special loan for China Latin America infrastructure and $5 billion US for China Latin America Cooperation Fund. In 2016, China has provided 10,000 training opportunities for Latin America. By China's foreign aid to countries and regions list can be found except Latin America and Caribbean countries, Asia, Africa, Oceania, and Europe are not only China's foreign aid countries, but also China's Belt and Road Initiative cooperation partners. In 2017, as first Belt and Road Forum for International Cooperation, the Chinese government announced that it will offer $9 billion US for improving people's well-being. $1 billion US is targeted funds for poverty reduction and $56.8 billion US in special loans for infrastructure, production capacity, and financial cooperation to participating countries of Belt and Road and international organizations. In the 21st century, with the improvement of China's economic development level and the increasingly prominent strategic importance of the South Pacific, China has gradually increased the intensity and scale of assistance to Pacific Island countries and made a commitment of assistance to Pacific Island countries on several important occasions. By 2012, China had provided a total of 1.5 billion US dollars in various kinds of assistance to Pacific Island countries, assisted the construction of over 90 completed projects, and sent several teams of medical and agriculture workers to Pacific Island countries. In 2013, China announced a series of assistance measures at the Second China Pacific Island Countries Economic Development and Cooperation Forum. Mainly includes 1 billion US dollars special loans, 1 billion US dollars preferential loans, and 2,000 government scholarships. In 2014, when President Xi Jinping met with 8 leaders of Pacific Island countries, he announced some major measures to improve the infrastructure, education, and training of Pacific Island countries, including China will provide 2 billion US dollars loans to the Pacific Island countries in the next few years, offer 2,000 government scholarships, and 500 training opportunities. Next, on the other hand, with enhanced ability of participating in global affairs, China has within its capacity rendered support to the assistance programs initiated by multilateral development organizations and exchanged experiences and explored practical cooperation in an increasingly open-minded manner. On the road of poverty reduction, China has always attached great importance to cooperation with international multilateral institutions. The multilateral South-South cooperation in agriculture between China and the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations has become a model for South-South cooperation within the United Nations system. China has twice contributed 80 million US dollars to FAO to establish a trust fund to promote South-South cooperation in global agriculture. At present, China Trust Fund projects have been implemented in 12 countries, and nearly 3,000 Chinese experts and professional technicians have been sent to carry out field demonstrations and training for local farmers and technicians. And more than 50 capacity building training missions have been organized to China. From 2012 to 2018, China carried out 2 phases of China FAO Uganda South-South Cooperation Project, sending 47 agricultural experts to Uganda through the FAO to provide all-round technical assistance in the fields of food, horticulture, aquatic product, animal husbandry, and water conservancy. In the 2 projects, Chinese experts have spread 80 agricultural technologies in Uganda, selected and bred 82 varieties of fine varieties, organized nearly 200 training courses, and trained nearly 8,000 people, including 15,000 local farmers and technicians. In 2016, under the impetus of the South-South Cooperation Project between China and Uganda, 7 China's agricultural enterprises invested US $220 million in Uganda and jointly established China-Uganda Agricultural Cooperation Industrial Park. With them, which has pioneered a new aid model of technical assistance and industrial park construction. China has become the largest partner and supporter of the China FAO South-South Cooperation Program. In 2017, China's Assistance Fund for South-South Cooperation provided 1 million US dollar to the World Food Program for humanitarian assistance in the tribal areas of Pakistan. In 2018, China's Assistance Fund for South-South Cooperation provided 4 million US dollars to the United Nations Development Program to improve people's livelihood in the tribal areas of Pakistan and Balochistan province. In 2020, the WFP signed an agreement with the China International Development Cooperation Agency. China provided food aid to more than 300,000 poor people in Ethiopia and Guinea through the World Food Program. Furthermore, China strengthened cooperation with regional financial institutions such as the Asian Development Bank, the African Development Bank, the Inter-American Development Bank, the Western African Development Bank, and the Caribbean Development Bank to channel more capital into the fields of infrastructure, environmental protection, education, and healthcare in developing countries. By 2012, China had donated a total of $1.3 billion to these regional financial institutions, apart from China's investment of 20 million US dollars to establish the Poverty Reduction and Regional Cooperation Fund in the Asian Development Bank in 2005. China donated 20 million US dollars in 2012 and donated another 100 million US dollars in 2016 to this fund to help with the poverty reduction and development of developing countries. With the COVID-19 outbreak in 2020, the China Poverty Reduction and Regional Cooperation Fund, based at the Asian Development Bank, contributed 2 million US dollars to help the Asian Development Bank developing members respond to the outbreak. Now, this is all from this section, and thank you so much for watching this.